I am sure the discussions surrounding this movie are going to be so civil. Let's talk about The Apprentice. Okay, so as you may know, The Apprentice is a biopic about the one, the only Donald Trump. This has already had a lot of conversation around it. Trump has tried to get this banned in America or something because of the way that it paints him. I've seen a tweet from director Ali Abbasi saying that he went into this completely neutral and unbiased. And I just know as soon as this thing goes wide, there's just going to be such toxic discussion around this movie because it holds a pretty firm stance, and all it is going to do is reaffirm the opinions of one group of people and have another group of people completely deny that. Now, politics is something that I just hate to talk about in general. It's not something that interests me. It doesn't define who I am as a person, but it kind of can't be helped with this movie as we're talking about Donald Trump, a man who is right now campaigning to be the president of the United States once again. This, however, does not go into that aspect of his life. This is more way back when he was building up his empire and building up Trump Tower and his business, which makes for a fascinating story. You know, I remember a time when he was seen as this celebrity. He had the Celebrity Apprentice going on, and he was making appearances on all these shows. He had this feud with Vince McMahon in WWE like years and years ago. And as I said, it makes an interesting story because it builds the foundation of who he is later going to become. Sebastian Stan plays Donald Trump, and I think he does a phenomenal job here. I think first and foremost, the greatest asset to this film are the performances. I think they are some of the best this year, no matter what you think about the movie and the way it's handled. Sebastian Stan is just so incredible here. He starts off as someone where you're just thinking, it doesn't seem like Donald Trump, but it is before a time when he was a big deal. And there are certain mannerisms that aren't quite showing its face yet. However, as the film progresses, he slowly transforms and becomes a lot closer to what we know him as now. And I just love the way the film handled that transformation of this person, and seeing how money just doesn't change a person, but makes someone more of who they already are. And I think that is a big takeaway from this movie. That's what this arc seems to be illustrating. Because Donald Trump, he seems a little bit more reserved and isn't quite the person that we know him as now. But after meeting Roy Cohn, played by Jeremy Strong, things start to change a little bit. His values begin to change, and he follows these values and rules set by Roy Cohn to become who he is today. And I found that to be quite fascinating. It made for an incredibly engaging movie just watching this transformation unfold. And by the end of the movie, you see a Donald Trump that we're more focused on now, and the way that he acts and talks, the way that he uses his hands, the facial expressions. It's all there in Sebastian Stan's performance. And it doesn't come off like an SNL skit either. It feels very genuine. But as I said, earlier and earlier into the movie, you don't really see that as much, and I really like that aspect of it. It really showcases Donald Trump as a person, the whole spectrum of things before he was a big deal, and how that has changed him. But with that said, despite how great Sebastian Stan is here, to me the standout was Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn. I mean, he has just been on such a tear as an actor. He is playing very similar roles to what we're used to from him. You know, he just came off Succession, delivering such a powerhouse performance as Kendall Roy. And then you have this, which almost feels very much like a transformation in of itself. He's wearing this subtle makeup, which does make him look a lot like Roy Cohn in real life. And the physicality of the performance just transforms him. You don't see Jeremy Strong here, you see Roy Cohn. And a lot of these scenes, especially in the first act of this movie, were incredible as it focused on this character and the way that he influences Trump and giving him that taste of success and what it takes to maintain that and to keep competition at bay. It feels like a very ruthless business movie at first, and then it starts to evolve into something else. And for a lot of its runtime, I didn't see it as this hit piece, which it has been quoted as being on Donald Trump. It did seem like just showcasing a transformation. It's illustrating a lot of things about Trump that we already know about the guy, and people that love him are willing to ignore some of these things or not believe in them. The ones that don't like him really embrace those things about him and talk about them all the time. He's such a divisive figure, and the film will only push that argument even further. I don't buy the fact that Ali Abbasi is playing a non-biased role as the director here. I do think he is leaning definitely one way, because there are events in this film that do not make Donald Trump out to be a good person at all. He starts off maybe a little bit sympathetic because he's a little bit more shy and reserved about things. But as the film progresses and as he slowly changes into what we know him as now, he becomes the villain of this story. There are certain events in here which showcase downright despicable acts. And yes, it is built off certain allegations, especially against Ivana Trump. There is one sequence there which I did find to be maybe the most potentially insulting of the movie, especially if it's not true. Some of those scenes will only make him look bad, and if they're not real, then you're just fabricating a story here. And without something being confirmed like that, it does go into just some very murky territory, which just doesn't make for a good discussion about a film at all. But to me, it just goes against the whole "it's not biased" approach. And that's not the only example. There's just many examples within this film that showcase that this is definitely trying to make Donald Trump to look like a villain of this story, as certain characters who seem to be the bad people in this story become a lot more sympathetic as it goes on, because Donald Trump turns into such a monster. On a technical note, I think this film is quite outstanding as well, with some beautiful cinematography. Seems to be in something similar to a 4:3 aspect ratio, and a lot of the filters that come through in this film look absolutely beautiful, as it spans quite a while. It seems like decades have passed in this movie. And because of that, you get different styles within the cinematography because of that. There's some that seem very emblematic of the 70s, and then we get into the 80s, and just seeing those subtle changes were really brilliant moves, and was a nice touch from Ali Abbasi, who I think does a great job directing this movie. I have more a problem with the way it's written and the way that this story has been constructed, rather than the way that it is approached stylistically, and some of the ideas behind it, because I do think as a biopic, it is far more interesting than a lot of other films out there. As I said, I think the performances are top notch, and I did find myself to be engaged in this story. And as someone who is really neither here or there on Trump, I found it to be an okay movie. Now, if you are leaning really heavily one side or the other, you're going to have very strong opinions about this movie. I think if you're a Trump supporter, don't watch this movie. You're not going to like it. And if you hate Trump, then this will just reaffirm your beliefs. So maybe this one might be more worth your time. Either, whatever side you're on, or even if you're in the middle and just want to watch a decently constructed biopic, you can do a lot worse than this. I think as a general thing, it is worthy of a recommendation. But if you're easily provoked by a lot of things about Donald Trump, I think it's not worth building up all those emotions over this. It's just not worth it. So if that is you as a person, just stay away from this movie. As for me, as a score, I'm going to give The Apprentice a 3.5 out of 5, because I do think it's a good movie. But that screenplay and the way that certain sequences are constructed, once again, make this feel like a very biased approach, with some of this film feeling a little bit flat at times as well, making this not as rewatchable as I would have liked. And those are my thoughts towards The Apprentice. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Let's please keep it civil. I'm not here to get into some political debate. I don't care. But if you have thoughts on the movie, I'd love to hear what you're thinking about this. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.